All of us who walk, run, and play on the face of this earth, we all have missions in life. How we approach these missions, what we accomplish, determines how fulfilled we feel in our later days. Here in Togo, amid the peace and tranquility of country life, a child was born 70 years ago. A child whose mission it would be to give strength, courage, and endurance to the workers of the land. That child was nurtured into the man we know today. A man who became an immovable force, an unrelenting and at times an uncompromising fighter. A revolutionary. On 3 occasions, the jail became his temporary home. This man received the highest award that a nation can bestow on one of its sons. The man is George Weeks, or PG, as he's more fondly called. Here in familiar Togo surroundings, George reminisces about those early days.
With the help of God, my family, my parents especially, with the help of the people of Togo, which I regard as one big family in those days, without electricity, without the convenience of communication, without pitch on the road, it's dust and dirt. But the life I lived was good, clean. I did not realize it then as I realize it now, that the best part of my life was spent in those early years that gave me the foundation to stand on and prepare me for what I was to become and to be recognized as a leader in the trade union movement. My label string is buried here. And to me, it has not rotted. It has grown and given to me the strength that I received, along with what I've mentioned earlier, to understand from my experience what it is to be a country boy. And I only realized that when I traveled with my father in the younger days to vacation in Port of Spain, because he was the head teacher in Togo Anglican School. And every August we make this trip almost like a pilgrimage. And when I got into Port of Spain and I met the city boys, they used to call me country bookie, because I had a different way of life, a different stem. So I realized there was something different from being from Togo than living in Port of Spain.
For him, the saddest part of his life was the separation of his parents.
Yes, unfortunately, as a boy, and that is the sad part of my life, and maybe played a part in what I was to become a sort of a rebel, because for reasons that I, at the time, was not aware of, the family broke apart. My mother took 2 of the children out of 6, the 2 sisters, 2 of my sisters, and my brother was already in college, Queen's Royal College, living there. I did not know him at all because he was in Port of Spain. So I was left with my elder sister, and I loved to play. And I couldn't play actually with my elder sister as I normally would do with kids of my own, so I had to look around for friends of my own age. And my father wouldn't allow that. He said, you must stay home, learn your lesson, don't go around playing and things. And I will run away and I will play as I feel I must. In a way, I didn't realize it, but I was rebelling against loneliness, the split in the family and the effect of that. And I did not know who to blame, but I was blaming somebody, and I was protesting because I thought of my sisters who I would love to be with, my mother who I remembered quite well was away, and I couldn't be together with them. So I was in rebellion against that, and whatever rebellion that came out, my father had to deal with that and try to discipline me as he disciplined other children in school. As a matter of fact, I got the worst of it because he wanted to show that, well, he's not discriminating when he's disciplining people, so he will, well, give me a good licking in front of everybody.
Now as a father and grandfather, George treasures the moments with his own family, appreciating very much the value of discipline. Another area where he was very much influenced by his father was in his assessment of the colonial system.
As head teacher, on vacation period, he must get the permission of the priest, the Anglican priest, to leave, to go on vacation anywhere. And if the priest said, well, I want to go and you must stay, well, he was forced to stay, and I could remember him criticizing that and talking about freedom and wanting to see, as I said earlier, my mother and sisters and even brother. I protested with him. Indeed, I cried because I couldn't go. I learned from him too, his dissatisfaction as to his wages and conditions of work generally. I listened to him speaking with other head teachers and traveling into Port of Spain to discuss with the Trinidad and Tobago Teachers Union about what to do, how to correct things. So I listened and to them, and that brought into my mind the question about injustice. And I listened to him talking with workers, agricultural workers who are employed privately and with the colonial government about their conditions. And he will advise them, he will discuss, he will write letters to assist them. And I will hear them expressing thanks to him. So I think that helped me to prepare myself for what was to come later on in my years.
In 1937, when the oppressed rose up, when the country faced its first major strike led by Chief Servant Tubal Uriah Buzz Butler, George was just 16 years old. He never dreamt that one day he and Butler would walk hand in hand in support of a better society. With the outbreak of the Second World War in 1939, George's life took a different turn. He joined the volunteer regiment, later on joining the regular army. He took pride in the uniform, the trampling of feet in heavy boots, the vigorous training, the discipline of army life. In 1943, when they called for volunteers for the Caribbean Regiment to go abroad to fight, he volunteered immediately. There he encountered the full force of discrimination against blacks.
So when I went abroad, I was not too surprised. I was prepared nevertheless to protest. When I arrived in the United States, in Virginia, of the United States, I was stationed in one of the American camps in that state, right? And I had to ride in the last seats in the back, right? We're not allowed to be up front. And we were not supposed to enter the white section, Virginia, and so on. I came face to face with what I call the beast of oppression. And that again reinforced my determination. Because when we left the United States of America, we went first to Italy, right? And you were trained to fight and to do battle. And you were marching on the front when, of course, the winter came and they felt that we were not prepared for such a climate. And they sent us to Egypt. And in Egypt, the Caribbean regiment in which I was a member of stood up in defense of themselves first when they met their English soldiers, what they call it, Desert Rat and General Montgomery and so on. And so we are not taking that. We are British citizens and we are equal and so on. And we fought battles with the British soldiers, the Englishmen, the Australian, Canadians, whoever they were, to ensure that the African soldiers who were discriminated, just like they were in America, they had that separation. They must sit as one united group. And we did that. We fought battles in Cairo, everywhere we go, we were fighting. And that is what laid straight into my mind, that led me decide that on my return I will have to battle something more than before I left.
The war also provided him with an opportunity to develop his political ideology.
But it's in Egypt I was able to get hold and read the Egyptian Gazette, speeches from the socialist thinkers, the leaders of the Labour Party, led at the time of Clement Attlee. He was deputy to Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister. And when I read Attlee and his lieutenants speak about social justice and what led to the Second World War, with the deals and the betrayal of the conservatives and so on, and the capitalists, I said, well, that is not our justice. That is what is responsible for what I experienced as a boy in Togo. And I said, well, I have to know more about what is socialism. And so I got hold of books to read, in addition to the speeches I read in the Gazette. And I began studying that. And when the Germans were defeated, victory in Europe became a reality, and there was talk of defeating the Japanese. I decided that I will talk to certain people about socialism and learn more about it, because we were prepared. So they explained certain things to me that fit into my whole life about justice. And again, I was further reinforced to come back with that type of mind. Not to be any leader. I had no thought about being a political or a trade union leader. That was furthest thing from my mind. But I was prepared to argue, to debate, and to ensure that by the gift of words and understanding and deep within me, that I could convince people to march a different way than they were doing at the time.
That was but one stage in the exciting life of the man, George Weekes. Isabad was the place where it was all happening in the 1930s and 40s. Tubal Uriah Buzz Butler was the moving force behind the Butlerite movement for the advancement of labor.
the conditions of the poor Indians and Negroes in sugar and oil respectively was nothing short of subhuman. It was clearly a case for early rectification. But how to do it? Letter after letter was dispatched to the powers that be in the oil and sugar industry. No replies. We turned our attention to the government of the day. Every letter was attended to, acknowledged. But what about the alleviation of the condition of these poor workers? Well, nothing was attempted, nothing done. And so I thought that the time had come when we had to take positive action to achieve positive results insofar as betterment of the condition under which these people were forced to live and die and work.
George Weeks joined the Butlerite movement. So close was the relationship which developed between these two men that George became known as Butler's protege and his son. Here, outside the Butler Hall of the Revolution, 54 years after the historic June 19, 1937, George Weeks reflects.
When I was elected President General of the Oilfield Workers Trade Union in June 1962, just before independence. Before that, I used to come right at this junction and look at Butler with his warrior workers commemorating the death of laborers who looked and walked like Butler. And he was paying a tribute and commemorating that death. And I saw this as great significance. So I joined with Butler, and I told the officers that this division, because remember there's a history about the birth of OWTU, the arrest of Butler, his detention and so on, and the split that arrived later on when he was released after the war in 1945, 1939-45 war that created a division in the leadership. And the leadership then of OWTU did not want to have anything to do with Butler and his militancy. I recognized that and I joined with him. And every year it grew larger and larger because it had the official backing now of the Oilfield Workers Trade Union. And we demonstrated from here with the Butlerites. Not a normal working day, any day it's set on. We marched from here down to the spot where Labrador Charles was shot. And we will lay wreaths, we will sing songs, we'll say prayer. Butler would lead that, and it was very moving. And because of my identification with Butler before and after I became President General, and the way how I moved along the lines that he attempted in the early days, and after I had reinstated him because he was expelled from OWTU for being too radical, right? I reinstated Butler when I became President General by requesting the annual conference to disband that decision, right? And so he became what is called now an honorary officer and member of the OWTU. And so with that feeling of appreciation, Butler decided that he will call me his son. And I felt honored by that.
There's a lot been said about Tribal Uriah Buzz Butler and his significance to this country. How do you evaluate Butler? How do you see the role of Butler in the development of this country, where we are today?
Well, in one word, great. Because Butler and his warrior workers, as he described them, agitated for what was then called home rule as a first step towards independence. He spoke about the oppression and exploitation of Afro and Asian people, meaning the Indians in particular. And he united them, because when the explosion took place, it wasn't the question of just African oil workers. Indians were involved. Sugar workers were joining with him. He was their hero. So his role in uniting the Africans and the Indians or Asians was a terrifying thing for the colonial office. And they wanted to ensure that that unity was broken up. If you recall, also, Dr. Williams wrote a book, right, in which he said in that book that one of his greatest achievements was the setting apart of the sugar and oil workers who wanted to unite under one leadership under George Weeks, guided by C.L.R. James. That is a great achievement. Again, just like the colonial office feared this unity of the Africans and Indians together, so it is. Went on when we became independent in 1962. Dr. Eric Williams, as Prime Minister, decided that he must break this unity, because sugar workers who had Badi Sagan Maharaj as the leader came to me with a petition marked SOS. Save us. I was head at the time of the TUC, and I gave them my support. I got the Trade Union Congress to agree to give them the support, because Badi's broke a strike of the sugar workers, came to oil, they marched, they shut down the whole industry. And when they did that, the sugar industry, William said that was dangerous, that they're looking for unity again with the oil, and he must stop that. And so the ISA was born in March 1965 to bring an end to that unity of the sugar and oil workers under my leadership.
George Weeks, in his desire to see a Trinidad and Tobago which had a socialist base, was a founding member of the Workers' and Farmers' Party. In the 1966 elections, however, the party failed to secure any seats.
Well, we fought elections and nobody won, and the defeat was sad, but not surprising, in the sense that the strategies operated by the opposition to the Workers' and Farmers' Party, Dr. Williams feared C.L.R. James. He feared the unity of the Africans and Indians. Indians are led, you could say, by Steve Maharaj, who had taken over the DLP when Dr. Capeleo, Bernard Capeleo, was in London teaching at the university. And when we formed in 1966 the Workers' and Farmers' Party, help was sent for Dr. Capeleo to come back to lift the DLP up and so defeat the Workers and Farmers Party with the question of, well, conflicts of race and things was because you have to remember I was in Pont-à-Pied. Oil workers wanted to win Pont-à-Pied seat. That is the one I was fighting. From the DLP. DLP wanted to win the seat for themselves, whereas the sugar workers in particular wanted me. But when they realized that oil workers were not in support of myself in particular, I'm not even talking about so much the party generally, they said either split the vote between the DLP, Mrs. Lilias White, and George Weeks, the PNM candidate, Leslie Edmonds, who became the mayor of San Fernando under PNM, will split in. And they came by delegation. They said that they would like me to be their representative. But unfortunately, because the stand taken by oil workers, especially in Pleasant Park, that they did not want me in trade union, in the politics, but just in trade union.
George was also a founding member of the National Joint Action Committee in 1970 and the United Labour Front in 1975. However, he was never successful in grasping political support.
PG, one of the things that interests me is that you were able to combine industrial and political. And while extremely successful at the industrial level, you never succeeded in the same way in conventional politics. Is it that the workers who supported you as their industrial leader were too sophisticated to vote for you?
Well, you have to decide that for your own self. All I could tell you is that workers informed me and reporters who interviewed workers, even PNM workers, who were against me politically. But they wanted me to remain as a trade union leader. Why? Because they said to me, they do not want a leader that will bow and be afraid of Dr. Williams to go and sell them out for political reasons, and they know that or believe that I would not do that. So they wanted me to stay in the OWTU to protect their interests, to make gains for them, because if they put into power or into office as President General one of the candidates that the PNM itself was supporting, it means that they have to take instructions from the political directorate, and they say they want somebody who's independent. So they say remain there and participate in this. That is the story.
But your political part has been even stormier. It's not just losing election, it's making some serious jail.
Well, when you play with such powerful forces, I think, it's like the people saying you can't play mass and hate proud. I was prepared for anything. I believe in what I was doing, and I know that the others are fearful. So when they detained me in 1970, I was following the preachings of Butler first, and even Dr. Williams, not the Prime Minister. Dr. Williams preached about democracy, about the right to strike, that anybody who is against strike is an idiot. Anybody who bans strike will lead the country to fascism. And his preaching, I followed because I admire that, and I was for it. I marched for it, as a matter of fact. He is the one, because I stood for what Butler and himself preached, decided that I should be in jail, because I believe that the big businessmen, the transnationals themselves, so directed that I be put behind bars.
PG, I think in many ways it seems that the history of our times has been, the two protagonists have been you and Eric Williams. You have now been in a position where you have outlived him, and you have a perspective on Eric Williams. What is your perspective on Eric Williams?
Dr. Williams, I admire. He's a great intellectual, a defender of what he sees as exploitation of the black man. But I do not admire him as a prime minister. Had he stayed out of politics, just like oil workers wanted me to stay out of politics, had he stayed out of politics, right, and preached the way I think he would have done more. But he got caught up in fear. That's like so many countries today, as you mentioned, the breaking down of the Berlin Wall and the need for money. Not the question of principle, right? Not the question of justice. It's a question of capital gain versus that of human rights. As we see manifested in the struggle going on in South Africa right now, it is the same thing that went on here before 1937, exploded in 1937, 19th day of June, right? So Dr. Williams couldn't face that. He couldn't deal with that. He hadn't got the political will individually, even though he had the support of the majority of the people to advance against the forces that he criticized. He felt that it was too dangerous, that he might end up somewhere, someplace that he did not want to end up, like so many leaders. So they surrendered there.
The history of Trinidad and Tobago, perhaps, would be much different if George Weekes had failed to take his mission in life as seriously and as dedicatedly as he did. Like many others, Kafra Kambon has ensured that he will be forever remembered.
Well, the fact that I chose to write the book on him, I could have only done it because of the admiration that I have for George Weekes as a person who has devoted so much of his life to a very real struggle that has involved some serious sacrifice in order to try to change the society. And it's because I have that admiration for George that I decided to write the book. I know that he's in a very controversial period of his life, but then he has always been a controversial figure. That's one of the things about George, always controversial. And maybe he is embroiled in controversy now because of that same kind of, he holds on to things very stubbornly if he believes he's right, even though he might lose a lot for it.
We made vigils. I don't know if you know what they call vigils. Like prayers, We made vigil. We merely know the whole of Trinidad through George Weekes. Until this lady and I, and the others, Mrs. Weekes, a lady from Palaseco, well, the women auxiliary, the women that was more vigilant then. We go to what the place name? Up Mayaro. We went all about making vigil to save George Weekes from being killed in the jail. And a little more, if prayers didn't used to answer, oh no, he would have been a dead man. He have done his bit. And I do believe he was a testing man. So the bit that he was doing, it wasn't in vain. No, it was not in vain.
On into a period of transition from colonialism to independence, George Weekes' contribution to our society must always be recognized.